Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Chairman's Chat from the Congressional Western Caucus. I'm Dan Newhouse. This week, we are celebrating National Clean Energy. And today, I have a very special guest, a friend of mine, my colleague in the great state of Louisiana, the vice chair of the Western Caucus, and also he leads the Republican Energy Climate Conservation Task Force, Mr. Garret Graves. Garret, thanks for being with me.
Oh, you bet. Great to be here.
Good. Garret, you, as I said, you're leader of this task force, which I'm just learning how to pronounce the acronym. You recently unveiled, I think, 6 key policy points. So let's just start this conversation. You tell me a little bit about the task force.
Sure.
Why these key points are so important, and a few comments about what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah. Well, look, first of all, look at what's happening in this country right now. We've seen gasoline prices double. We've seen natural gas prices, where the majority of our electricity comes from, triple.
Or more.
Or more. You have seen roughly 1/4 of all Americans have had to decide among covering gasoline and utility costs, food costs, or medicine. I mean, think about that. Those aren't choices. Those are all fundamentals. And so clearly what's happening right now in regard to this administration's energy policy, it's a complete failure. And so we want to make sure that we chart a path forward that achieves objectives like affordable energy, reliable energy, clean energy, making sure we're using technologies that are exportable from the United States to other countries, and making sure we have a good, secure supply chain, that we're not dependent upon countries like Russia, China, and others, as this administration is. So that's what the task force is doing, is really focusing on how we can use U.S. resources, and whether it's the hydro resources in Washington State,
we're very proud of that.
It's the oil and gas offshore Louisiana. It is obviously solar and wind opportunities in states. It's looking at the next generation nuclear. It's all about just using science and data to help indicate what's needed in the future and make sure that we have a plan to get us there without wrecking the economy or forcing people into poverty, as we're seeing right now.
And having them make these horrible choices.
Really false choices in regard to, are you going to have food? Are you going to have medicine or pay your utility bills? They are false choices.
Wow. Well, thank you for doing that. You know, I was proud to join you and Leader McCarthy. We were participants in a roundtable focused on permitting something called Let America Build. You remember that?
I do.
We discussed the glaring need for communities that we represent to move toward a clean energy future, but we can't do that without permitting reform. So could you talk a little bit about that, share a little bit about your efforts to modernize, to streamline, and the importance of permitting reform?
Sure. So Dan, a lot of folks have acted as though laws like the Endangered Species Act or the National Environmental Policy Act, the Clean Water Act, that these are just sacrosanct untouchables. But what's happened is, if you look back since these laws were enacted to today, for example, the average environmental analysis under the National Environmental Policy Act, it might have taken a year or two when this was enacted. Now we're looking at the average road project going through a 7-year environmental analysis. 7 years. In my home state of Louisiana, similar perhaps to some of the ecological restoration in the Puget Sound, we've been working to try to restore our coastal wetlands. The sole objective is ecological productivity benefiting the environment, and these laws have actually obstructed our ability to do just that. We've seen how it's blocked renewable energy projects, it's prevented transmission. Heck, even in your area of Seattle or near you in your home state, it took 8,000 pages to do an environmental analysis of a light rail project. Again, a light rail designed to benefit the environment, mass transit. And so rather than actually complementing the environment or helping to protect it, these laws have actually become obstructions or impediments to us carrying out activities to improve the environment. So we have a component of our task force recommendations called Let America Build. And there are some components to that which include making reforms or modernizing the National Environmental Policy Act, where we truly focus on the environment, but we also strike that right balance of actually implementing projects, whether it's a renewable energy project, it's a traffic efficiency project, or other solutions.
Wow, glaring.
Huge. It's amazing how these laws have been weaponized to actually prevent things from happening, including really important projects.
Yeah, that's a word that I've been hearing a lot about recently used describing these laws, these regulations being weaponized, and it's truly to the detriment of our country. You know, throughout the country, we see efforts to improve the use of energy and production of energy, make it cleaner and better. You know, you mentioned hydropower. We're very proud of in the Pacific Northwest. We're blessed, really, to have the opportunity to produce clean, renewable, carbon-free energy through hydropower. Other parts of the country have big into solar, wind, and other things. You come from a great state of Louisiana, rich tradition of fossil fuel energy, but that doesn't mean you can't be part of this clean energy future. Tell me a little bit about some of the priorities your constituents see as they meet the challenges of the future.
Sure. Well, look, even the Biden administration's analysis shows you're going to have a 50% increase in global energy demand over the next 28 years. Say that again. The Biden administration says that you're going to have a 50% increase in global energy demand over the next 28 years, a relatively short period of time. And so you sit there and look at it like, oh my goodness. If you look at developed countries, up to a 58% increase in natural gas demand, developing countries up to an 80% increase in natural gas demand. Again, the Biden administration's figures. And so we're going to need hydropower. We're going to need nuclear. We're going to need wind and solar. We're going to need wave and geothermal. And we're going to need oil and gas. And so a lot of folks have this bias or prejudice toward conventional fuels and say, well, look, these are dirty, old technologies, we need to get rid of them. We've actually been able to demonstrate, whether it's through complementary carbon capture technologies, whether it's through new combustion processes or others, we've been able to demonstrate that you can actually use some of these conventional fuels in a way that effectively is indistinguishable from an environmental perspective. And just to give you some indication of how this has actually happened or some numbers on it. Back during the Obama administration, they had something called the Clean Power Plan. And it was this objective to reduce emissions in the energy sector by 30% off of a 2005 baseline. So you're going to reduce emissions in the energy sector by 30%, by nearly 1/3 by 2030. Of course, when President Trump came in, he said, we're going to get rid of this because he was concerned about it being too specific on the technologies. He wanted a technologically neutral approach. So here's the outcome. As a result of jettisoning it and getting the handcuffs off, the energy industry was able to exceed the 2030 goal in 2019.
Seriously.
So they didn't hit the Obama goal in 2030 as he intended. They exceeded it in 2019 as a result of the ability to take the handcuffs off, to use all technological opportunities or all innovation. And so this includes natural gas. And in fact, that's been one of the biggest contributions to the United States being the global leader in reducing emissions, more than the next 7 emissions reducing countries combined over nearly a 15 or 17-year period.
That's amazing. 11 years sooner.
Yeah. How about that? And so we've got to stop this bias or prejudice against certain technologies, for certain technologies. We've got to acknowledge the science shows surge in global energy demand. We've got to look at the resources we have in the United States, whether it's your hydro, our natural gas, looking at new nuclear technologies like small modular reactors and others. And we've got to make sure that we're using U.S. resources to prepare for the future, because otherwise we're going to continue subjecting ourselves to Russia. We saw how that ended up. Or subjecting ourselves to China, where they make nearly 90% of the solar panels manufactured globally. This is a really dangerous direction for U.S. energy security.
Wow. That's amazing. We have a lot to be proud of in this country. We really do. But we have a lot of challenges moving into the future. So National Clean Energy Week, you're the leader of the Republican task force looking at these issues. I appreciate you being with me on this version of Chairman's Chat for the Western Caucus. Any closing thoughts? Anything you'd like to share with our listeners?
Yeah, look, I just say thanks for doing this. I think it's really important that we get real data out there, that we make energy policy and climate and conservation policy based upon experience, based upon facts and data. We've got some really clear evidence out there. If we continue down this trajectory that the Biden administration is currently sending us, we're going to be continuing in the direction of higher energy prices, actually higher emissions, and greater energy insecurity. And whether you want to look at Europe as examples that have done just that, or even the state of California, which has the second highest energy rates in America, eighth worst emissions growth, least reliable grid, most dependent state on foreign energy. We've got to make sure that we're learning from the failures of California, the successes of other states, and make sure that we model a national energy strategy on the things that are going to work and ensure affordability, reliability, cleanliness of energy, and not head down this path that we've seen clearly doesn't work.
And will continue to require Americans to have these false choices in front of them, not being able to afford the things that they really need.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Perfect.
Well, Garret Graves, thank you very much.
You bet. Thank you, Mr.
Appreciate
Chairman.
your leadership.
Yeah, you got it. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank you. Thank you for tuning in.